Hey everybody, welcome to our plant here in LaSalle Parish. I'm Michelle Martin, U.S. Communications Manager for Drax. I am joined by Brad Mayhew. He is our Senior Vice President of Operations. Brad, what are we doing today?
Michelle, today we're going to take a tour of this plant, but first, let's go get signed in and watch a safety video.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brad. Okay, so the first thing that we do when we come into our LaSalle Drax plant location is we meet Cami Finlay. Cami, what's your job?
Office administration / scale clerk.
All right, Cami, when people first come in the office, what do they have to do?
They have to sign in and then watch our safety orientation.
All right, thanks, Cami. Once you watched your safety orientation, you make sure you have the appropriate PPE on, and then we can take that tour. A lot of people would see all the wood here and they would accuse us of just blindly cutting down forests. What kind of wood is this actually?
Great question, Michelle. So first, we don't cut trees, but all of this is sustainably sourced, low value, small diameter roundwood. This is roundwood that has no commercial value to sawmills like we'll see here in a bit, right?
So these aren't building houses?
No, these are not building houses.
Low furniture?
No furniture.
All right, well then how does this all get here?
Great question. So we have a team of sustainability foresters that ensures all of this wood is compliant with our 4 certifications.
And so basically we're making sure that we're checking all the boxes, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's.
It's all checked.
We're joined now by Taylor Linky. Taylor, what is your job with Drax?
I'm a sustainability forester.
Okay, and so tell us kind of what your job does.
Yeah, so I support the sustainability manager. I have a counterpart that's responsible for Alabama and Mississippi, and I'm responsible for Louisiana and Arkansas. My job supports the procurement staff and being able to source sustainable material to bring into the mill.
We see all of this wood behind us, these wood piles, and a lot of people probably drive by, they see it, they wonder what it is and where it comes from. Can you kind of tell us the story of where this wood comes from?
Absolutely. So all of this material comes from sustainably managed forests, whether it's a small family landowner, a larger private landowner, or even public land such as the Forest Service. All of this material that we purchase is pulpwood, so that means that it's coming from thinnings or potentially tops off of a final harvest. It's going to be smaller material that's not going to be taken and used by a sawmill.
Okay, so essentially like the leftover from the industry.
Yes, correct. Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Taylor, why is sustainability such an important part of our industry?
It's incredibly important because it allows us to have forests in the future to continue to source material from. So specifically for Drax, all of our material that is sold into the UK, our final product, the pellets, are all SBP compliant. So for us, sourcing sustainable material allows us to be able to be compliant.
So you said one of the things is to be SBP compliant. What does SBP stand for?
SBP is Sustainable Biomass Program.
Sustainability plays a massive role, and there are certifications that we subscribe to. Can you kind of tell us some of those?
Yeah, so we are certified to SFI Fiber Sourcing, Sustainable Forestry Initiative, Sustainable Forestry Initiative Chain of Custody, FSC, which is Forest Stewardship Council Chain of Custody, and Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, PEFC Chain of Custody as well.
Why are those certifications so important?
So our certifications are important because they allow us to support our Nature Positive initiative.
Okay, and so just to kind of like sum up your job and what your department does for us at Drax, essentially you make sure that we're doing everything right. We're checking every box that we're meant to, and we're not just going out there and wild westing it, right?
That would be a great way to describe it, yes.
All right, Taylor, thank you.
Michelle, this roundwood is only a small portion of what eventually becomes a pellet.
So what all is used to create a pellet?
So most of what goes into the making of a pellet is residual material from a sawmill, like this one next door. That residual material includes sawdust, wood chips, and shavings. All right, Michelle, now we're going to go over here to this truck dump where all the material from the sawmill comes in, and this is how we receive it eventually before it becomes a pellet. The truck's coming from the sawmill next door. You can see they don't have to go on the road. We're connected directly with the sawmill. So great partnership with the local sawmill. And over here we have chip trucks that are coming in that will unload. It's like a pellet.
So we made it easier to do business by taking the leftover from their industry and making it into a new product.
Absolutely.
And so we're just working in concert. It's a beautiful thing, Brad. Not something you see every day. A truck basically being turned upside down. What's happening right here?
So The truck driver is controlling this process, but he backed his truck in. It's full of chips from the sawmill next door and lifting it to where all the chips fall off.
Okay, so you're saying gravity's at work.
Gravity's at work.
And my guy right here is safely in his little shed.
Perfectly safe. He's in control of what's happening to his truck, and he's in that shed for his protection. All right, Vasily, let's go look at the debarking common chipper, where we take all that round wood, separate it into bark and chips.
Okay. And this is where all of the round wood comes to?
So all of the round wood, before it becomes a pellet, we demark it, take the bark off for fuel for our furnace, which we'll look at later, and then we chip the wood to make it to a pellet.
So we take the bark from the wood and we burn it for energy for our dry.
So it's the 100% the heat source of air.
So where we're headed right now, there's a person in here that kind of keeps an eye on everything.
There is a person in here. He's our chipper operator, and
Okay.
he is running this whole operation from the debarking drum through the chipper. Let's go meet him.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, so this room is the chipper room.
This is our chipper cab.
Okay. So what all happens? Like obviously we see all the fiber out there, all the low value round wood.
That's right.
The crane picks it up and puts it on this conveyor.
So exactly. So the crane operator, there's actually an operator up in that crane, and he's picking up this round wood and putting on what we call a stem deck. It's a series of chain conveyors, and that stem deck is going to feed it into this debarking drum.
Okay.
In a second, we'll see this drum turn, and it knocks all the bark off that round wood.
What happens to the bark?
The bark goes to a pile, which we'll look at in a minute, and then we burn that bark in our furnace. It's the heat source for drying out of our wood chips.
Okay, so there's a crane operator, and then of course there is this good man. What does he do?
He's our chipper operator, so he is in control of everything from the stem deck, the first set of chain conveyors, through the debarking drum, through the chipper. The chipper operator we met earlier is managing this grapple, and he's using that to make sure that we don't overcrowd the chipper.
Okay, so if the chipper gets overcrowded, it can lock up and stop working.
It's a bad day.
It sounds expensive too.
It's downtime. So, Michelle, from here, let's go have a look at the chip pile where all these chips are going to, and the bark pile where all that bark from the debarker is going to.
Okay.
Cool.
It's two sizable piles.
Two big piles.
Let's go down. So we saw how the product goes through here, through the chipper, the debarker, and then the chipper.
That's right. You can see the chipper cab we just left.
Just right there.
Back over here is the debarking drum. Just took the bark off the round wood, and then round wood became chip, right? So all of that bark ends up right here behind us,
In this
under
big
this
old
shed.
pile.
Yep. Big pile. We keep it covered.
You keep it covered so it doesn't blow away or anything.
So it doesn't get
wet
rained on.
all
Yeah.
the time. So it falls out of that.
Yep. That conveyor comes from the debarking drum, puts all the bark in here. There's an operator with a front end loader managing to keep it tidy.
I know that we have all that product that we pull through the debarker, knock all the bark off of it, but what do we do with all of this bark?
So all of this bark gets burned in our furnace, and burning it in the furnace generates the heat to dry the wood chips that eventually become a pellet.
So we're using every part of what we bring into this plant.
That's correct. We use 100% of the tree. The bark becomes the energy source for drying. And around this corner, we're going to go look at the chips that we made, combined with the chips that came from the sawmill, which will eventually make into a pellet.
So when you say it's gonna fuel the dryer, we have to dry the fiber because
That's
some of
correct.
it's wet.
That's correct. So these wood chips are 50% moisture. And we want to make pellets that are much, much lower than that, right? Because we're going to burn them in a power station. So we dry these down to less than 10%.
Oh.
We use the bark that we burn to generate the heat to do that drying. All right, Miss Shelley. Now we're on the other side of this chip pile. We saw the chips come from our chipper and the various feedstocks come from the sawmill to this big pile.
Okay.
And from here, they're going to go to a set of hammer mills. So past here, we have 7 hammer mills to where we reduce the size of these chips just before we dry them.
Okay, so I see like the huge pile, I see where it's at. I understand that it goes there, but how does it get from here to there?
Great question. So underneath this big pile, there's a tunnel with a screw in it that takes the material to this conveyor. This red conveyor here that feeds it into one of these 7 hammer mills.
Okay. And you said that, there are 2 sets of hammer mills here. There are 7 here, right?
There's 7 hammer mills here. We
This
call
is
these...
the green.
Absolutely. So these are not dry yet. The material's not dry. We call these green hammer mills. So we mill it once before we dry it, and we'll see after we do it again after we dry it for the
And so the whole point of taking this through the hammer mill is to make it smaller than it currently is.
Right. So from here, we want it uniform in size, smaller and uniform in size before we dry it. And we'll go see the dryers next.
It's more efficient drying if it's all the kind of the same size.
Correct.
and smaller.
Better quality from the dryer.
So obviously a lot of activity going on right here in these hammer mills, and we can't see it, but what's the process that's taking place?
Right. So inside, it's a drum with 100 hammers spinning really fast, and it's beating those chips we saw until they're small enough to go through a tiny screen.
So not like a standard hammer. We talked about this before.
Metal hammers
If
turning
it's a
really
big
fast, right?
process,
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is our only plant in the U.S. with 2 dryers. This is our largest plant in the U.S. So behind us, you can see the 2 dryers taking all the material we just saw from the green hammer mills, right? It was cold and wet. And here we'll dry it down to 10% moisture or less, eventually make a pellet. But that's what's going on here.
Okay, and is that like a long process? Does it take?
It's continuous. So there's just continuously the material we saw coming through. We'll go around and see the furnace and all, where the heat is generated to dry it. But yeah, this is actual dryer. You can see it turning. The material is actually flowing through.
And we talked about dryers before, and I've made my jokes, but I really do want to know.
There's no clothes in there. Don't ask.
Clothes. I really want to know though, like compared to an at-home dryer, are there any similarities outside of it just drying things?
Just the name.
Well, what happens next?
Right, so we saw the 2 dryers. The chips that we make in the dryer, we'll go to another set of hammer mills. We'll go look at that in a minute. On this side, it's the pollution control. So all the exhaust from the dryer, from both dryers, comes first to this west.
West?
West.
What does that stand for?
Wet electrostatic precipitator. So what that's doing, the exhaust from the dryer, the west is capturing all the solids, the little bits of solids that are left in that exhaust stream. And then from the west, we go to the RTO. So you see this stack, that's the final exhaust before it goes to atmosphere.
Okay. So that's essentially steam that's coming out. So sometimes people are like, oh, I see, white cleans, white smoke. It's not smoke, it's
Right, so no, it's not smoke. So all the solids are captured in the west. The rest of the exhaust goes to this RTO behind us. It's really hot, and it's burning off all the VOCs to where it's just steam coming out the stack. Right, so this is the exhaust side of the 2 dryers. Now let's go look at where the chips go from the dryer, the actual product, right? It goes to the hammer mill. We'll go look at that stack.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, Brad, I see what I can only think of is another set of hammer mills.
That's correct.
What do these do?
Right, so after the dryer, we have 7 more hammer mills, right? So we saw what size it was before the dryer, and now we're grinding it even smaller to make a pellet. So the product from the hammer mills will go in this building, eventually become a pellet. We'll go look at that next. But the exhaust from this process goes to this RTO right behind us. So similar to the RTO, this is also burning off all the emissions from this process.
So an RTO stands for what?
Regenerative thermal oxidizer, and this is a catalyst oxidizer, a catalytic oxidizer.
Okay, so just another layer of emissions control that
It's emissions control from the dry hammer milling process, and from the pellet cooling, which we'll look at also. All right, Miss Ellie, let's go check out the control room. But on the way there, let's stop and see what's going on in the quality lab.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Such a gentleman.
All right, so here is our lab where a variety of tests are going on to check the quality of the various products throughout the process.
Okay.
And look at here is Jonathan Earth, QC Tech. Let's see what he's got going on.
Hey, Jonathan, I'm Michelle.
Hey, Miss Ellie.
Now, Jonathan, quality control is a very important job here at Drax. And so you have one of the most important jobs on this plant. Tell us kind of what you do. Walk us through what you do.
Oh, well, after we take up all of our samples from all over, we look at the moistures of all of them. Everywhere that you might have went out there is more than likely is where we've picked up samples from. So we look at the moistures of it, the size of everything, to make sure they're the right consistency, compatible with everything that we're doing.
So you guys check for the size, moisture, the consistency to make sure it's a durable product?
Yes.
Okay, and so these all come from different parts of the plant?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So you kind of get an idea of, making sure that point A and point C and point F are all appropriate.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
good to know.
Everything has to fall inspect.
I learned this at one of our sister plants, is that y'all also kind of recreate the shipping process.
Yes, we always how it goes on the train out there. We can just kind of shake it up as if it was out there.
So imitating that shipping process, what
Yeah.
you've been experienced to make sure
Yes.
quality product.
Yes.
Excellent, Jonathan. Thank you so much for
Oh,
kind of showing
all
us
right,
what we do. Nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you too.
All right, now that we've seen the lab, let's go have a look at the control room.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, Michelle, right here to the right, it's a control room for the whole plant. And operating this control room is Joey.
Hey, Joey. I'm Michelle.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Nice to meet you. All right, Joey. This is kind of the brains of the operation, right?
Yes.
So tell me what your job is here.
My job here is to kind of control and maintain all the operations of the plant. We are able to manipulate everything that you need from this one room and ensure that we make a quality product.
All right. And so essentially, like I see some fires on the screen over there. I see a lot going on in front of you.
Right here, you have both of your furnaces,
Okay.
and furnace 1 and furnace 2. Right here, you have our RTO and your RCO systems.
Our
That is
controls.
that's your emissions control,
Okay.
your atmospheric cleaning units. And then we have our reclaimer, your wet hammer mills, both of your furnaces, your dryers, and then your press hall, line 1, 2, and 3, and then your dry hammer mills at the right-hand top.
Okay.
And then we have our camera system located up here and all of our trends for the entire site.
So literally from A to Z, everything
Yes,
that's
it is.
happening here, the life cycle of a pellet, really.
Yes,
Okay. Well, okay. Like you like the eyes and ears of the operation. All right. Thank you, Joey. I appreciate it.
no problem.
All right, Brad, where are we going next?
All right, Michelle, so now we're going to go to the pellet mill floor.
Okay. Well, lead the way.
All right. All right, so now we're going to go to the pellet mill floor. Loud in here, right? So we have 16 of these machines. This is the actual pellet mill making the pellet. We'll go downstairs and have a look where they're coming out. They're nice and cold.
Oh, there it is. With the pellet.
All right, so we just left the pellet mill floor. You saw we had 16 of those.
Yeah.
Right, and now we're going to go downstairs, right? So the pellets come off that are really hot. We'll go downstairs and see the coolers where the finished pellets are.
And in here that's where all the fiber that we've been following from the beginning gets pressed into pellet.
Absolutely. So it went through a green hammer mill, one of 2 dryers, a dry hammer mill, and then through that pellet press. And now it's loud, right?
Loud.
So now we're going to go downstairs and see a pellet. All right, let's go look at the cooler room. So above us was the machines making the pellets, right? And they come out really hot. This is where the pellets are cooled before we can ship them. We're trying to hold the pellets in this cooler. The longer they stay in there, the cooler they are when they come out. So let's go around and have a look at the actual pellets that they've been making.
Okay. And this is where quality control cools from.
Right, so that's actually a screen. Anything smaller than that screen gets made into a pellet again.
Okay.
Everything bigger than that screen is going to Baton Rouge. So this cooling is the final step before we load it into a rail car, which we'll go look at next.
All right, Brad, we have seen the start to finish of a pellet from when it comes in as that unprocessed fiber through the whole process to where it's finally a pellet. Where does it go now?
All right, so from the cooler we just saw, those pellets go in one of these big silver silos behind us, right? So that's some intermediate storage, and from there, that follows this path of conveyors, and it goes into one of these rail cars. We load 80 rail cars, ship them to Baton Rouge.
All right, thanks, Brad, for walking us through the LaSalle plant, and thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, I'm Michelle Martin. This is Brad Mayhew, and we'll see you next time.